Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. Today I wanted to share with you a quick overview of how to start homeschooling. These are just some tips that I've learned from the homeschooling process myself. We've been doing it for 12 years now. And while I do have a How to Get Started Homeschooling playlist, I realized that it was probably easier for some people maybe to get at least a glimpse of what they need to do to start out all in one video. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. Let me just begin by telling you what I am not going to be sharing with you today. I am not going to be telling you specifically, step by step, how to homeschool. That would be really dishonest of me because there is no one right way to homeschool. I am going to share some tips with you today, though, on how you can decide what your routine will look like. And really, if anyone would tell you that they can tell you exactly what you have to do in order to homeschool, that's not really a completely honest answer, because while they might be able to tell you exactly how they homeschool, they will not be able to tell you exactly how you should be homeschooling, because that is really something that you will be finding out on your own on this adventure. So again, I'm just going to start out with just some basics, step by step, of when you decide that you want to make the plunge, to take your kids out of the school system. So again, I have to point out that I'm not referring to distance learning in this video, since so many people are doing distance learning now. The term homeschooling is kind of getting morphed into something that it's not. Homeschooling is not distance learning. Homeschooling is when your children are learning outside of the school system. So that is really what I'm going to be talking about today. And I'm going to be helping families who really do want to break free of their school district. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to learn your homeschool laws. Here in the United States, all states have their own homeschool laws. So there is no one blanket homeschool regulation that all 50 states follow. You really need to do your own research, and you need to look up what it is that you as the parent have to do in order to withdraw your child, and in order how to stay within the regulations of what you need to do. The best place for you to look that up, that I believe, is hslda.org. Now, it's also helpful for you to go and just look up and read your own state's homeschool law for yourself. But I know that sometimes that can be confusing, which is why I do recommend reading up on it on hslda.org, because they do give a good summary of each state's laws. Some states have no regulation. You don't even have to do anything. Although if you are withdrawing your child, I believe that then there is something that you have to do. You can't just stop having your child go to school. There are also states with low regulation, moderate regulation, and high regulation. So I just want to encourage you. I'm in a high regulation state, and it really isn't all that bad. But again, that's something that you're really going to have to do, because you want to make sure that you go through all the proper channels in order to be legally homeschooling your child, so that you at least have that out of the way, and then you can get started on the actual process of homeschooling. So once you have done that, if you have to file any paperwork, once you've done that, you can start doing what is called deschooling. And this is something that not a lot of people know about. I didn't know about it when I first started homeschooling, and I wish that I would have. Deschooling is really a time where you give your child lots of time on their own to explore their own interests, to play, to just get used to being home, to pretty much forget that school even exists for a while. Because just like people need to detox from certain things, kids very often need to detox from school, because homeschooling, you will soon find out, is not anything like school. So let your child just do the things that they were never able to do while they were in school. Just let them live almost as if, or not almost, let them live as if it's summer vacation, and that they didn't have to worry about school at all. And you want to do this for a length of time, again, so that your child is used to not having to be in a school routine and doing everything a school way. It's also good for you as the parent to deschool, because most of us have been through the school system, so we have a lot of the same preconceptions about learning that our children will have as they are coming out of the school system. So it gives you as the parent time to just decompress, and you yourself have to start looking at learning in a completely different way. And really, one of the best ways that you can do that is just by watching your child, seeing the things that they like to do, watching how they like to do things. And as you pick up on these things, they will all help you to decide how it is that you're going to approach homeschooling your child once you actually do get into doing a routine with them every day. Now, different families will deschool for different periods of time. Some people recommend, just doing it for like a week or two. Other people will say that they had their child deschool for 1 week for every year that they were in school. So, for example, if you took your child out of school in 3rd grade, you might do 3 weeks of deschooling. I have even heard some families say that they let their child deschool for 1 month for every year that they were in school, which I know that a lot of families would not be very comfortable with that because, for example, if you're taking a child out of school in 6th grade, that would be 6 months of deschooling. So I get that. Where on the other hand, 6 weeks of deschooling seems a little bit more feasible, because what you need to remember is that just because you are not doing any sort of sit down or structured learning with your child during the deschooling period does not mean that they aren't learning. Learning can be found in everything. Had to get rid of my cat because she kept meowing. But anyway, how long your child deschools for is really up to you. Just take cues from your child and you will be able to see when they might be ready to start a new process of learning. And you as the parent will also know when you are ready to get started. Now, some things that you as the parent can do while your child is deschooling is I highly recommend that you do a lot of reading and you do a lot of research on not just homeschooling, but on education. I recommend that you read anything by John Taylor Gatto. For example, Dumbing Us Down, The Hidden Curriculum of Compulsory Schooling, or there is also Weapons of Mass Instruction, also by John Taylor Gatto. And he also wrote The Underground History of American Education. That's one of my all-time favorite books. And these are all books that are not specifically about homeschooling, but they are about the reality of school. And the reason that I am recommending that you read this is because once you know the underlying reasons that they do what they do in the school setting, you will be far less likely to try to replicate it in your home. Because really, if you're going to homeschool your children because school was not a good fit for them, why would you replicate what they're doing anyway, right? So yes, definitely read any books by John Taylor Gatto, because once you know the history of the public school setting or public school system and why the techniques are used, you're not going to want to go down that path with your kids. I also recommend that you read some books by John Holt. I highly recommend Learning All the Time, How Children Learn, and Teach Your Own, the John Holt Book of Homeschooling. John Holt, he basically changed the entire way that I look at learning. He helped me to realize how children are natural learners. They're natural scientists, and that a lot of times we as parents think that we need to constantly push things on them, where if we would just let them go and give them time, they would learn so much better on their own. So those are some great books to read by him. And I'll leave a link, and I'll leave links in the description box to these books in case you forget the names of any of them. But you also want to read books on, also on homeschooling. For example, the Homeschooling Handbook is a good one because it gives you an overview of the different types of homeschooling methods. Because there are, for example, there's the traditional school method, which is like, textbooks, basically what they do in school, you just bring that home. There is also unschooling, which is very close to deschooling, where you basically live as if school didn't exist. There is relaxed homeschooling, which is what I do, where you take a little bit of philosophy from unschooling, because self-directed learning and children learning on their own really is effective for most of them, but your kids still need a little bit of structure. And I'll leave some links to all of the videos that I've made, like on unschooling and relaxed homeschooling, so you can get a better idea of them. But there's also Charlotte Mason homeschooling. There is eclectic homeschooling, there's Waldorf homeschooling, there's classical homeschooling, Montessori. I could keep going on and on. But yeah, when your kids are deschooling, this is the perfect time for you to read up on these different styles of homeschooling, because as you are watching your child in their deschooling process, as you're seeing not only what they like to learn about, but how specifically they like to learn, you can then take that into account as you're reading about these methods and think to yourself if that would be a good fit for your child. But also you need to remember that it also has to be a good fit for you as the parent, because if you choose a homeschooling method solely on it being a good fit for your child and it's something that completely is not good for you, then it's not going to work out. So really you want to keep both you and your child, or children, depending on how many kids you're homeschooling, in mind as you do decide on your homeschooling method. You can also learn about the different routines. You might want to read up on maybe some homeschooling blogs or watch some homeschooling channels, get some ideas there. The only caution that I have for you is that if you find that any of the blogs or channels are making you feel like anxious, or like you couldn't do anything, or like you think that it's going to be too much for you, I just recommend don't quit, don't give up, just stop watching those channels or stop reading those blogs. Because sometimes if we get too caught up in thinking that we have to do something like someone else that really isn't a good fit for us, we might start thinking that, well, maybe homeschooling isn't good for us. Yes, you can find a way to make it work, and it doesn't have to look like anyone else. Also, there are different schedules. And when I say schedules, I'm talking calendar years. Some people will follow like the school calendar year. Some people will school year round and they just never really stop, or they might take a break here and there whenever they feel like they need to. Other people do what's called a year round homeschooling, but it's more of what is called a Sabbath schedule, where the homeschooling occurs 6 weeks and then they take a 1 week off, and then 6 weeks and take a 1 week off, and then they take like a 6 weeks off for Christmas and then for summer. And that is what we do. But I'll leave links in the description box to all of these videos down below. I really hope that I remember all of them. But these are all things for you to think about as you are doing the deschooling process. And remember, if you make a decision at the end of the deschooling process and then you start homeschooling and you find out down the road that it really isn't working for you, you can change it. That's the beauty of homeschooling, is the flexibility. So don't feel like anything is written in stone once you get started. So after the deschooling process is over, I know that a lot of times people probably expected me to say to jump right in after you filed, at the school district or whatever it is that you had to do, and told you, okay, go online and find curriculum and buy that. And no, notice that I didn't mention that yet. And that's because the things that I just talked to you about are really important. That you do not want to just jump right in and just start buying curriculum before you actually know about the homeschooling methods, know about your preferences, and know about your child's preferences. So really, getting homeschooling supplies is not something that has to be done very, very quickly once you file with the school district or do whatever it is that you have to do. And so what I want you to remember is that you don't need a curriculum to get started. So say that your deschooling period is over and you haven't, really decided yet on what your method is going to be, or maybe you just ordered them but don't have anything yet. You don't need to wait until that curriculum comes, or you don't need to wait until you order a curriculum. You can easily start homeschooling. Just read to your kids, have them read to themselves, take them to the library, play some board games with them. Play card games with them. Maybe just go pick up maybe some math workbooks at the store for the time being. Watch documentaries with them. Take them outside. Take them to the creek for walks on little field trips. These are all easy ways to get learning in for your child, that you don't need to worry that you haven't gotten that specific curriculum yet, because I'm going to tell you that there are a lot of homeschooling families who don't even use a specific curriculum. Even with us, the only actual curriculum that we use really is for language arts and math, and then my kids have a German workbook and they do unit studies, but we use so many library books. My kids, they don't have history textbooks, they don't have science textbooks, they don't have health textbooks, no textbooks for any of that. We just use the library for that. And there are a lot of families who do that. And those unschooling families will likely not use curriculum at all unless their child asks for it. So really, don't think that just because you haven't ordered a curriculum yet that you're going to be holding your kids back. You can easily start homeschooling without having that formal curriculum in your hands. Easily. So once you do start homeschooling your kids, though, I just want you to remember that slow and steady wins the race. You don't have to jump in right away and have your kids start doing everything all at once, because for some kids that might be great. That might be right up their alley. They might be rearing to go. Whereas other kids, or sometimes even parents, might not be ready to just jump into everything and might need to kind of ease into the process of homeschooling. Gauge your child's behavior, gauge their reaction, and, gauge your own reaction. I keep saying about considering yourself, and you really do need to consider yourself, because you are a large part of this homeschooling process as well, not just your child. So if you need to, you can get started out maybe with just having your child do some silent reading and some math every day, and then just do that for a few days, and then maybe add in maybe a documentary, or maybe add in a field trip or some art projects. It's really up to you. But just remember that you don't have to dive in and go right into a school schedule. And I also want to remind you that you do not have to cover every single subject every day. That is a mistake that a lot of homeschooling families make. They think that they have to cover every single subject every day. And as far as I know, there is no state that tells you that you must do every subject 5 days a week. But again, that's something that you'll discover as you look up your own homeschool laws. But you also have to remember that a lot of times subjects kind of intermingle with one another. As you're learning about Thomas Edison, you're going to be learning about science and history. So really, when you look at it that way, there are really often subjects that are being learned all at one time, because life isn't broken into subjects. Yet we seem to do that with our homeschool. They do that in school, but really that's not how life works. Everything just kind of intermingles together. And so the last piece of advice that I have for you, I did mention it before, but it's really important. Always be open to change. If you go out there and you find a routine and it is working good for your kids, it is working good for you, and then if you find out maybe 6 months down the road, or maybe even 3 months down the road, or even next year, any length of time, sometimes things change and they might not work so well for you anymore. That doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong. That doesn't mean that anyone has done anything wrong. What it might mean is that you just need to try something else. And I mentioned this before. That is one of the beauties of homeschooling, is having the flexibility to stop what you're doing if it's not working and to try something else. Now, I do want to caution you against stopping every single time as soon as it seems like something is not working, to just immediately stop it. I wouldn't recommend that. You do want to give things time, especially at the beginning as your kids are getting used to being homeschooled. But if you see that over time things just are not clicking and are not helping, then yes, it is totally fine for you to go out there and try something else. That's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one over on Instagram, because YouTube disables my comments. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.